distinguished Senator Dino Milai. Thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
The pleasure is mine, thank you.
The Senate President, he's been a very topical issue lately. First of all, he has the troubles in the Code of Conduct Tribunal for failed asset declaration. Now he's in the Federal High Court of Abuja, where he's been accused for alleged forgery of the Senate standing rules. What do you think is stopping Nigerians from mobilizing en masse in the streets to clamor and ask for his resignation?
Basically, that would have been very, very possible and motivating if there's actually a prosecution going on. What the Senate President is going through in the CCT, from my own myopic point of view, it's not prosecution but persecution. We all know that he's suffering because he had ambition to become the Senate President. In fact, our President is a very ambitious person. That's why he contested for the presidency of this country 4 different times. So it's not a crime to be ambitious. And Bukola Saraki should not be punished for being ambitious. So the CCT trial, as far as I'm concerned, is a persecution. And the case is already falling like pack of cards under cross-examination. And I want to believe that it is because of the failure of the CCT ongoing trial that an orchestration was made for the forgery case in the High Court. The National Assembly is an independent arm of government, you know, and it has its own laws, rules, tenets, doctrines, ordinances to regulate our own proceedings. So it's a domestic case that ought to be tackled domestically. The National Assembly or the legislature should not become an appendage or a department of the executive. And I want to say, therefore, as far as I'm concerned, as a legislator and a member of the 8th Senate, there is no case of forgery. Because when I came in as a senator, 2 days before my inauguration, I was invited for documentation on the 7th of June, 2015. And on the 7th of June 2015, I was given a copy of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and a copy of the Senate rules. How the Senate rule was produced, I wouldn't know.
But the copy you were giving, the 7th Senate claims that they never altered, they never made amendments to the standing rules.
It does not matter whether the 7th Senate made amendment or not.
So how did the
rules
change?
I will explain this to you, that in 1999, when there was no Senate, when they resumed, they started operation with a rule. Who produced that rule? The bureaucracy. So once the 7th Senate ended on the 6th of June, so whatever happened between the 6th of June and the resumption of the 8th Senate, only the bureaucracy can take responsibility. And let me tell you, only the bureaucracy registered us. The bureaucracy gave us a copy of the Constitution and a copy of the rules.
And the bureaucracy is made up of
during
Sorry,
restoration.
could you just clarify that? The bureaucracy is made up of who?
Of the National Assembly management.
Okay, and that is?
Headed by the clerk of the National Assembly.
Okay.
You have the clerk of the Senate, you have the clerk of the House of Reps.
And how did the rules change from the end of the 7th
You
Senate
cannot,
to the beginning of the
use
8th
the
Senate?
basis of the 7th Senate for the 8th Senate.
Okay.
Because we were given a document called the rules 2 clear days before our swearing in as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Understood. But those rules that
those
you were
rules,
giving
those
are
rules
not the
must
same as
not,
the rules
those,
from the 7th Senate.
They must not be. And the basis for why they must not be is because in 1999, when there were no senators, there were no House of Rep members, they resumed with the rule. Who wrote the rule?
Okay,
the bureaucracy wrote the rule.
Okay,
so
understandable.
It is not forgery for the bureaucracy to produce rules for a particular section of the National Assembly, either the lower or the upper house. There's no case of forgery.
But your standing rule clearly says that if you want to amend any rule, as you just said, it has to be done on the floor of the National Assembly.
Let me tell you, you cannot give carpentry job to a tailor. The 7th Senate ended, and the 8th Senate is a new Senate. It's a new Senate that can alter, amend, delete, erase any portion of the rules as designed by the bureaucracy.
So it's an established fact that the standing rules were amended between the 7th of June.
Amendment takes place. I just told you that amendment takes place.
Alteration. Is that what you said?
Let me tell you, like I told you, that the bureaucracy is responsible for giving us.
This is what we're saying. We're saying the same thing. The bureaucracy altered the rules between the 7th of June to the 9th of June. We've established that fact, right?
I have not established that fact. Because what they are calling now amendment is that the inclusion of the phrase that elections should be conducted by open secret ballots. And that insertion, obviously by the bureaucracy, because there was no Senate, is not in contravention of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria or the Electoral Act. Because the Electoral Act, as amended, prescribe open secret balloting system. And what they are claiming is inserted in the rules is open secret balloting system. What is in the rules of the House of Representatives as I speak to you is open secret balloting system. As I speak to you, that is what is there. So if you find out now in the Senate, it's only in compliance with the Electoral Act as it is. So you have not done anything contravening any provision of the Electoral Act. Bukola Saraki was not voted for. So that law did not even apply to him because he was unanimously elected Senate President. There was no vote cast on him. There was no division. In that sense, you will find out that it is just an orchestration. A man who did not benefit even from
the alteration
as it may be, alteration in quotes. Okay?
But why is it alteration in quotes when we just established the fact that the bureaucracy altered the standing rules between the 7th
and I am saying that it is within their power to do so.
Exactly, but we have.
You cannot call it alteration.
So what do we call that?
I mean, you cannot, because the 8th Senate, if you are coming in as a new student of a new school, you are given new school uniforms. You're not expected to wear the uniform worn by somebody who had passed through that school. You're expected to come, the school gives you your own school uniform. So, and you do not expect your own school uniform to be in the same state with someone who has graduated from that same institution. In essence, we as senators of the 8th Republic, the document we were given by the bureaucracy 48 hours clear before our inauguration, to us is the document we worked with. And that same document, with that same document, we have received the president into the National Assembly twice. We had a joint section with the president in attendance with the president of South Africa. With that same document, we screened the ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We screened the chairman of INEC. And with that same document, we screened the DG of
all the ministers. We understand that. But what you're saying now is that if anyone, if the Federal High Court, if the executive or judicial arm of government has a problem with the way that the rules were handled with the bureaucracy of the National Assembly, then they should take it up with them.
They cannot even have problem because domestic issues are tackled domestically. The legislative arm of government is not an appendage, listen to me, it's not an appendage or a department of the executive.
But you are in the courts right now,
listen,
so obviously
it is even a wrong case. The Attorney General of the Federation committed a major blunder because there are two subsisting judgments as I speak to you on this same matter. Two subsisting judgments that have said that this is the internal case of the National Assembly and that the National Assembly have enough laws and rules to guide our own proceedings.
But distinguished Senator, let me correct you. Forgery is a national case. It's not just a case of the National Assembly.
Because there's
no
because there's no forgery
or forgery in a private institution.
Because this is not forgery.
But
why? Because the Constitution have said we have the powers to regulate our own proceedings. That's what the Constitution says.
Exactly.
And if we have been given the constitutional power to regulate our own proceedings, then it becomes an internal issue. And I'm not just saying this myopically. I'm telling you that there are two subsisting judgments from the Court of Appeal and the Federal High Court that this particular matter, the executive will not interfere in the internal running of the legislature. So the case was dismissed on that ground. And the judiciary in that judgment said the legislature is an independent arm of government that have laws to regulate our proceedings. So they should use their internal mechanisms in regulating whatever proceedings they have. Remember, there's something called the Privilege Act. So we have powers and enough laws that if a senator is aggrieved about a particular situation, we have a committee called the Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition Committee. That is the right place for you to go to. If you go to court, they will ask you, have you exhausted the internal conflict resolution mechanism of your institution, your ministry, your department before coming to court? Because that is the reason why those provisions were made in the first place.
Exactly.
And none of them wrote a petition to the Ethics and Privileges Committee for this matter to be debated.
Well, it was a fellow senator like you who took the matter to the police.
That is what I'm saying, that he ought to have petitioned the floor of the Senate on this matter. And this matter ought to have gone to Ethics and Privileges. It ought to have undergone such processes. And that is why the courts in two different instances have thrown out the matter. And that is why even our allocation is they call it first line charge. It doesn't go through the bureaucratic processes that other ministries, departments, and agencies of government will go to, because it's an independent arm of government. Same for the judiciary. So it will become a blunder, a misnomer, for the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, who is the chief law officer of this country, to neglect two subsisting judgments that have said that have ruled on this issue, that have prevailed on this issue, neglect it completely, and then file charges against Nigerians that have never been invited to even take their statements. In this matter, the section 36 of the Constitution is very clear. It talks about fair hearing. And fair hearing means Saraki ought to have been invited by the police. They ought to take his statement. Ekweremadu ought to have been invited by the police. They ought to take his statement. It is after taking their statement that you can now charge them based on their submissions. But they were never invited. They never gave a statement. They were just charged unceremoniously.
Let's take a break and we'll be right back on the Osasu Show. Welcome back to the Osasu Show. We are still with distinguished Senator Dino Milai, representative of Kogi West Senatorial District. Before we went on break, we were discussing the alleged forgery scandal that is going on in the Senate. Right now, we're going to switch gears a little. We're going to talk about the immunity clause that the Senate has been clamoring for the constitutional review process that is currently going on. So, distinguished Senator, why should the Senate be giving, or the National Assembly in general, be giving immunity? Anyway,
as an individual, and speaking as Dino Milai, I do not support immunity for any Nigerian, irrespective of status or office. I am one of those actually propagating that the immunity clause be completely deleted in our constitution, that the president should not have immunity, the vice president should not have immunity, the governors should not have immunity, their deputies should not have immunity. And that would be a very, very wonderful way of fighting corruption. But I understand also the frustration of my colleagues that are asking for the immunity clause for the Senate president and the Speaker of the House of Representatives and their deputies. And the frustration is coming from the fact that there is a deliberate effort to undermine and also subject the institution of the National Assembly to become a surrogate of the executive. The actions so far that have manifested from the conduct of the executive shows that there is a serious underground plan to turn the legislature to becoming an appendage or a department of the executive, and that should never happen.
The executive has said time without number that if the Senate, if the National Assembly, specifically the Senate, just follows the rules and regulations, plays to the gallery of the rules, that they wouldn't be having the problems they are today.
Is it part of the rule that a man who was never invited by the police be arraigned? It's not. Is that part of the rule? Is it part of the rule that the institution of the Senate, we pass a resolution and the executive completely ignore it. It's a part of the rule. It's a part of the rule that once you are not on the same page with the executive, you are arraigned for crimes and offenses that you never committed. And that is the same reason why we have consistently advocated for the separation of the office of the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation. You cannot have such powers vested in a politician and an appointee of Mr. President. The Minister of Justice can be a political appointee, but the Attorney General of the Federation cannot be a politician or an appointee of government, because you are supposed to prosecute in public interest. You are supposed to be unbiased. You are not even supposed to be a politician. You're not supposed to be a card-carrying member of any political party. Talk less of being appointed by Mr. President, who has a political affiliation and interest. So until we separate the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, the executive will continue to use that office to witch hunt and to hunt our political opponents.
Senator Bukola Saraki, the Senate President, has called Mr. President a stooge. He basically said that there's a government within the government. Do you agree with this?
I want you to quote Senator Bukola Saraki rightly. I never heard him use the word stooge. But I know he said that there is a government and government. And from the way things are happening in this country, you definitely know that there's a cabal in this government. And the cabal in this government have manifested themselves, and anybody who is saying there's no cabal in this government is wasting his or her time.
For you to say there's a cabal in government, you mean that the cabal is in control, which means that the president is a stooge, that he doesn't have the powers that he is meant to have.
There are a lot of things happening in this country that the president is not aware of, because his powers have been hijacked by individuals, name droppers, who believe that whatever they say represent the interests of Mr. President.
So why can't the legislative arm of government and the executive, the presidency, come together and talk about this? Expose those that have hijacked the powers, if there is any such thing.
What we have resolved to do is to carry out our constitutional mandate as prescribed by the Constitution of the Republic of Nigeria, and that's what we're going to do.
When I speak to Nigerians on the street, they say everyone, the Senate, the House of Representatives, the presidency, everyone is just fighting for what he or she can get. They don't care about the ordinary man on the street. So all the fightings, they're going back and forth between the executive and the legislative, that doesn't really concern Nigerians. What we want to see, what ordinary Nigerians on the street want to see, is more food on their table, you know, access to clean drinking water, quality education, better health care, economic well-being. So when can we start to see this change that was promised by your party?
That cannot happen until the independence of the legislature is freely given. The poor man on the streets may not want to be interested in the mechanics of power play between the two arms of government. But I want to say that in an attempt to undermine the legislature, then the poor man will rather suffer more for it. Because we are the symbol of democracy. The legislature is the only reason why there is democracy. In a military government, there's judiciary and there's executive. The only thing that is absent in the military government is the legislature. So the legislature becomes the symbol of democracy. Without the legislature, there's no democracy.
So with the tussle in your party, you're obviously a member, one of the very, very vocal members of the All Progressive Congress. So it's kind of unfortunate that we are seeing this really, you know, big elephant in the room between you and some members, you and, you know, the like-minded senators and some members of the party.
Very well. So I'm a member of the APC, a very proud one for that matter. But when I became a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I'm not a senator of the APC. And neither am I a senator of any political party. I'm a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The party becomes my secondary constituency, where Nigerians are my first constituency. So the consideration of my oath of office that I took on the 9th of June, 2015, is to defend the integrity of this country.
If that is true, a lot of people are saying these issues will stop, this tussle between the legislative and executive arm of government will stop if Senator Bukola Saraki steps down and resigns.
Why should a man resign for not being guilty?
But if you claim that
the essence of this orchestration is to remove him. So why would he bow to people who are deliberately working to remove him? The Senate have a rule for selection and election, and that rule has been fully exercised. Today, he controls the majority of senators. We can never have a Senate president that is voted outside the chambers. They should wait, get form, get elected as a senator, come to the floor, and then vote him out. The only democratic means of removing the Senate president is votes to third on the floor of the Senate.
Which we understand.
That there
if
is
the
no
Senate
other
is really
means.
about the people, for the people,
Yeah.
and the voice of the people.
Yeah.
If this issue between the executive and the legislative can't stop, will stop. If
Why
Senator
are you
Bukola
not
Saraki-
asking for those in the executive to also resign? Because Bukola Saraki is Senate president in the interest of the public. And his goal and ambition is to make sure that he defends the people. And if that is going to be taken away, then that's even anti-people. It's against the people. So if you are saying there's a need for anyone to step aside, those who are trying to create commotion in the democratic wheels and movement of this country are the ones to resign. Because I know Senator Bukola Saraki means well, is sincere and passionate about the development of this country, is vehement about the masses of this country. That's why he raised the motion on subsidy, even when it was not very comfortable to do so in the 7th Senate. Even when there was a prevailing, monstrous PDP power in government. He raised that motion. And he stood against tyranny at that time. He went around this country with Mr. President, campaigned across the nooks and crannies of this country with Mr. President. When did he become a bad boy? But I want to say that judgment is mine, says the Lord. But a man must not, out of fear, out of intimidation, out of blackmail, drop his ambition. May that day never come, that out of fear and intimidation, we take an alternative decision. Bukola Saraki will not resign, will remain the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for 4 years. Those who want him out should be ready for a marathon. It's not going to be a 100 meters dash.
Distinguished Senator Dino Milaye, it's always a pleasure having you on the Osasu Show.
The pleasure is also mine.
We hope you will exceed when next we call on you.
Very well available. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you so much. So that's it for today's program. As you can see, we're able to establish some facts about the Senate President's alleged forgery case, and also his statement about the government in the government. But to find out more information about this whole issue, you can visit our websites where we have information on sustainable development and current affairs, which is www.theosasushow.com. To hear my personal views on this topic and more, you can visit my personal website or at osasuigmenedion.com and follow me on social media at The Osasu Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll see you same time, same place next week, and until then, take very good care of yourself.